In a previous video, I suggested that any fantasy society with somewhat ready access to magic should almost never stagnate at a medieval tech level. In my view, magic should never really be a barrier to progress, but rather be co-opted by industrious, creative, and mad types of people to make both progress and money. Here's how. The factors which caused the first industrial revolution are complex, manifold, and the subject of many a book and PhD. But for our purposes, a few key influences will suffice. First, a surplus of raw material. Britain simply had too many things in too large quantities to process it all using traditional methods. This ties into influence number 2, the advent of global trade, meaning both raw goods and finished products are in constant circulation, and the circulation of ideas is also in full force. The third motivation is a growing population, leading to not only more ideas in the global marketplace, but also far greater demands on agriculture and goods production. So, people need stuff, and that food and the stuff they need is all coming from all around the world. The only problem is that cottage industries can't transform raw materials into stuff fast enough using traditional manual labour. So to widen this bottleneck, we get reforms in labour, mostly including time and labour-saving advancements. Now, in worlds of fantasy which include magic, many similar problems may occur. I'm going to be using D&D 5e for this, as it's the magic system I am most familiar with, but this really works with any system which has more than a handful of magical folks. So unless magic has solved every problem for every single person, there will always be some imbalance in your world. Now, a few ways magic may already destabilise traditional labour include undead workforces, the conjuration of labour-intensive raw material products, weather-controlling magic, and the ability to fabricate complex products using magic alone. All of these are possible through D&D's magic, and all of these could lead to mini-industrial revolutions of their own. They may already be changing the way people work. The thing is, though, while each of these are likely to have some impact on your world, if a mindset of efficient labour for capital is not inculcated, as it hasn't been for most of human history, then these may remain niche, weird developments, localised and specialised to certain people or types of project. They may help communities suffused with magic thrive, but they might not entirely supplant the old ways unless this mindset shifts. We need this critical mass created by social pressure to form the basis of an intellectual framework for an industrial revolution. Without an understanding of labour as a capital producing affair, there's really no point to making your work more efficient. And while it's feasible that if every community has access to all this helpful magic, a general satisfaction might emerge, which might stagnate process for a time, eventually something must change. An incredibly successful cotton working society may simply get too many orders from all around the world to fill them. A growing population may outgrow the ability of magic to adequately feed it, or simply some mad fool has a creative idea. Mages in many settings love to research, experiment, and find new spell effects, or new uses for spells. The 1D&D playtests have brought back spell experimentation into D&D. It's been in many previous editions, but even in 5th edition, wizards have some access to mess with spells. They're constantly learning new spells through their own research, and high-level wizards even gain signature spells that they can cast while breaking some of the fundamental principles of magical spellcasting. So there's a group of hyper-studious nerds who specialise in either a school of spellcraft or a specialised spell itself, constantly experimenting and iterating. they're gonna make some weird stuff. This is actually one of my favourite approaches to world building. You start with a simple concept, like elves live longer than other folks, or sending allows a world to be near instantly globalised, and just extrapolate from there. It's quite a lot of what I do on this channel, but I'm certainly not the first to do it, and I'm certainly not the best. Introducing Skirples, whose magical industrial revolution is genuinely a revolutionary approach to some of these problems and to world building with constraints. Skirples takes concepts common in TTRPG magic system design and gives clear, delineated stages of how this magical period of invention and innovation and revolution may impact the world. So I don't spoil the supplement for anyone who might want to read or use it. I'm going to be discussing the general framework Skirples uses and applying it to one specific example of my own. As has been brought up, every single time I discuss the most world-shaping spells in D&D, Magic Mouth has potent effects when looked at through the lens of hindsight. The trouble is, very few folks might be able to imagine a computer as an end product without developing the thought and the concept through many stages of innovation. The supplement depicts the stages of innovation of any industrialized spell effect. Thusly, they start with an initial innovation, which moves in to an eventual public introduction to the product or the spell effect. This leads to a widespread adoption as people find value in it, and eventually the scope alters, meaning that everything that was before is simply a precursor to this new use of this technology. Thus we reach the height of ambition, which lead inevitably and inexorably into the terminal events. Skirple's setting is, after all, a pre-apocalyptic setting on its inevitable march towards apocalypse by one of the myriad options available, each on a variable timer. It's such a fun read and very fun to play too. So, we have our hyper magic wizard nerd who, in this case, loves Magic Mouth, and a framework for understanding how this spell might develop through a series of innovations. So let's go. Martin the Mouthy uses Magic Mouth to organise his life. He never needs to remember a command word for any of his magic items. He simply taps the specific item 3 times, and one of the many magic mouths active in his room will tell him the exact command word he needs. Indeed, his front door is also filled with magic mouths and acts as a kind of proto-switchboard, as long as people use the pre-prepared system. If you have a legal concern, for example, say the word legal, and the magic mouth will then tell you where you can stick your head. Indeed, if a mouth actually recognises a specific guest approaching, then that mouth may have specific instructions for how that guest can get in past all of Martin's traps. The initial innovation comes when Martin the Mouthy falls out with one of his old friends because he didn't receive a birthday gift from him this year. Annoyed, he modifies the mouths on the door to say yay if he returns with a present looking solemn, or boo if this friend decides to come to his door without his present. This takes multiple castings of the spell, but it'll be worth it. See, another 2 mouths are listening out for either a yay or a boo, and if they hear it, they will either give a regular way to enter secretly, or insult the friend with the most cutting 25 words ever devised, respectively, of course. And you see, Martin has found, through his massive study of this specific spell, a way to eschew the material components of it. So such frivolity is perfectly fair. Martin and his friend get a good laugh out of this, and the friend suggests they might make something of it. They're a bard, and they think it might be a method of actually telling a tale that can be interacted with by the audience on the fly, without the need for improvisation. The bard can record dozens of lines which ask the audience to choose their own adventure, and a magic-mouthed device with thousands of relays can be made which plays the whole adventure for an audience. They work hard on Marvin's mouthing manipulable machine and debut it for the first time at the local monarch at a grand ball. They've just got a tiny booth in the corner. But this introduction is a success. Every single noble wants a go on the game, but only one such device has been made. Every party that doesn't have the adventure game is a failure and a laughingstock. And Martin and the Bard are hard at work on building another of these machines, while the first one is loaned at great expense to anyone who can afford it and wants to impress their guests. Finally, the second machine is complete, with help from Martin's second-year wizarding students. And this one is bought up by a local theatre. They pay up front in cash, in hopes that placing the machine in their lobby might draw amazing crowds, which might want to come and visit their performances. Of course, the machine can also be a revenue stream of itself, because it's, in this theatre, 1 copper a play. They were right. Now the public have had their hands on this adventure game, and they're in love. It has attained true widespread adoption. But a colleague of Martin's, the Count, has had an idea. He's seen the popularity of Martin's machine and decides it may be also useful as a labour-saving device, not simply for entertainment. See, the Count is disappointed that many of the jobs within the great city are given over to folks who just parrot information. He wonders if Martin and his bardic friend could build him a fleet of mouthing manipulable machines capable of counting coin, taking orders, doing basic sums, and quoting prices or information, or, and I quote, any of the other menial tasks these imbeciles do. The Count is fabulously wealthy, after all, and the theatre money is very useful too. So Martin employs his second-year wizards full-time and gets to work. By the year's end, Martin's mouthing manipulable man is operational. It can do basic calculations, any necessary for managing a shopfront. Anyway, they can answer basic business queries, and critically, can operate infinitely. People are only really employed now as security guards and machine watchers. Special drawers in the machines are opened and closed with internally spoken command words, and the customers are happy with the efficiency savings and not having to count out their own money and make sure it's right. The world of commerce is different. The scope has altered. It's time to reach the dizzying heights of ambition of this project. See, now Martin's city never sleeps. Mixed with the wonderful things that Fabricate, Stone Shape, Sending and Mage Hand have done for the industrial life of people, solving complex manufacture, excavation and construction, mass communication, and perfectly replicable mass production, respectively, the actual working folks are mostly reduced to well enough paid supervisors and managers of the machines. Just to keep them happy and keep the economy ticking over, after all. People need money with which to buy things. After all, this is the most prosperous city in the region. Those tourist greeting machines are going very well, and this is, of course, the home of the interactive adventure game. And goodness knows they're still being produced now by almost every wizard in town. The Count's city is one of perfect service and games, with new twists on the formula emerging every week. It's a golden age of entertainment and prosperity, if it lasts. Oh dear, it didn't. The problem with mechanising your entire workforce, removing the need to calculate and placating them with escapist fantasies, is that when the overworked wizards reach a breaking point and can't or won't continue to build these machines, there's nobody really left to maintain them. In fact, there are very few folks left in the city who actually have practice in operating as efficient members of the workforce. With no new machines, there are no new games, and if the machines aren't being fixed, people start to notice a few minor errors in some of the cashier's boxes. But they're more worried that there's no more light entertainment and no more Magic Mouth music boxes. Mass popular culture is dead as soon as it is birthed. And who's to blame? Martin and his mouths. Either the upset ex-workers tear down the mages for their strike, or they tear apart the very machines that have liberated them from labour. After all this, it seems Martin and the Count are gone, vanished, and those minor errors which started occurring unnoticed seem to make a little more sense as rampant inflation hits the economy. It turns out that trusting these machines only made sense while the going was good, while they were stripped of the greedy ambition of man. The city is a mess of smashed mechanised cashiers. But at least there are arcades to play the old favourites. This is a rather humorous extrapolation, intentionally so, but we can clearly see the blueprints of the type of extrapolative world building you can do to manufacture an industrial revolution. All you need is one person to change one aspect of how the spell works through experimentation, and you get a runaway steam train of advancement. Sometimes you don't even need to change the spell at all. Skirple's magical industrial revolution does what I've just done 8 different times for 8 completely alternate topics, as well as having so much other great stuff for this style of game in it. And you do need a few of these on the go, just to keep things interesting and really give your world that sense that, oh gosh, everything is changing. After all, revolutions are never stable. And many things always have to happen for them to build on each other and create that groundswell that changes the way people think about how they work. I hope this has given some insight into developing your own magical industrial revolution, and also given some insight into that Magic Mouth computer argument. It is entirely possible to reach a computer instead of where we ended up. But each stage needs to be motivated by the state of play and the context of the world around it. You can't just invent the car without having first figured out hundreds of different uses for the wheel on an axle. That's just civilization. Thank you for watching. As with every topic, but very few more so than this, I feel like there's a lot I didn't quite get to cover. If you'd like more videos in this vein, please do let me know by subscribing to the channel and commenting that you want more. It really gives me a clue in what to make next. I'd love to turn this into a mini-series on how spells and magic may be used to power an industrial revolution, specifically Unseen Servant, Animate Dead, and Mage Hand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So with all that said, I've been Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.